All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Legal Tech Week. It is October 27th, 2023. And this is the show where we talk about the top stories in legal tech and legal innovation from the past week. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I'm the host, and I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next, and a legal tech directory also called Law Next. And our panelists today, Jean, you're back. You haven't been with us for a few weeks. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Jean O'Grady. I write the Dewey B Strategic blog, which covers mostly research, knowledge, and other workflow type of technology. And I also write a column for Legal Tech Hub.
And all right. And Victor, I grabbed you just as you took a sip of your.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal covering business of law and technology. Sorry, the Diet Pepsi is doing a number on me right now.
All right. Okay. I was going for iced coffee, but whatever.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law, and I have a podcast, Thinking Like a Lawyer. And before we went live, we were all, at this panel was all talking about how excited they are about Taylor Swift's new album. No, we had moved on to the Rolling Stones' new album, but still, happy 1989 day for anyone who celebrates.
Yeah. I've already moved on to Talking Heads Stop Making Sense movie, but so, and Nikki.
I'm Nikki Black. I am the head of SME and external education at My Case and LawPay. I write legal technology articles for Above the Law, ABA Journal, and the Daily Record. And I also oversee and write the benchmark reports and the legal industry report that we publish at Affinipay, parent company of My Case and LawPay. And I've been gone for the last few weeks, so I'm looking forward to today.
Great to have you back. And Steve Embry.
Hi, Steve Embry here. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads on legal technology and legal innovation. And it's nice to be here.
All right. So a whole bunch of us, I think, covered it in some shape or form this week was the announcement by LexisNexis of the, the final general availability of its Lexis Plus AI, its generative AI legal research product, by which it's promising no hallucinations, answers to legal questions. And I know there was a press briefing earlier this week that I actually missed, although I got to see the recording of it, but a number of you were all there. What did y'all think? Jean, you're our legal research expert here. What was your takeaway?
Well, it looks good. The thing, there's a couple of caveats during the briefing. Jeff said that they were going to sell it module by module, and then I had a follow-up conversation. I found out, well, that's how they're going to do it for small firms, but larger law firms are going to have to buy everything. So the price point, and I'll have more to say about this later, the price point for law firms, I think, is going to be pretty hefty. The one thing that surprised me during the demo, and I picked up on this because part of the PowerPoint, he said that they were going to continue to do prompt training for lawyers. And then I asked Jeff about it, and he said, well, yeah, it almost, oh, please forgive me, it almost sounds like we're taking a step back from natural language query, where lawyers are going to have to be a lot more careful about their queries. And there's a lot more caveats associated with the queries than when you read the press release, wow, we're about to enter nirvana. But this whole thing about the quality and the nuance of the prompt queries, that's interesting. And since I haven't actually used it, we're getting ready to set up some tests. I'll report back when I tell you what I think, but that just surprised me. And let me just add, since I already started down this road, the one thing, because I've also heard about what other, I mean, everybody who sells this, it's going to be hefty. And as someone who works in a law firm where we are currently buying two or three major platforms, I think that the notion that every law firm is going to have to buy every AI upgrade at an extraordinarily exponentially more cost. I think this may be the thing that starts to break down the duopoly, because I think people are going to have to say no. Because I mean, I am sure, you know, Microsoft and iManage or the DMS companies, they can come up and say, here's our new price tag. This is extraordinary, but you're only buying one. And now we're in a situation where you're buying multiples of something that's largely duplicative. And I just think this may be the thing that breaks the market. Bloomberg is the most far behind. They only have their studio, but you know what? Bloomberg is going to make their AI available to all their subscribers. So could this be the thing that upends the market? So that's all I have to say.
What I thought was interesting was I thought it looked really good. I was interested in the way they rolled it out, but what really interested me was the hallucination-free part. And when you look at the headline and when you look at how they use the adjective hallucination-free, because it is an adjective, it describes citations. So they're offering hallucination-free citations, not results, because then in the press release, it actually talks about how the results are not hallucination-free all the time. So I thought, go downstairs. That's enough. I thought that was interesting. I'm going to put my dogs in the basement.
Oh, I thought you were telling us to go downstairs. That's
I
enough.
thought you were talking. Yeah,
Yeah, all of you, you're banished to the basement.
I thought I haven't even said anything yet.
Yeah. I had my little bitch about their about their press release was the line that said, Lexis Plus AI is the only legal generative AI solution with citations linked in its responses. Well, that's not true, because VLEX, for one, has citations directly linked in its responses. And I wasn't in the press briefing you were all in, but I reached out to Jeff afterward, and he said, well, I haven't seen that, but their citations aren't in their responses. And I sent him a screen cap saying, look, they're in the responses. And so, I mean, it kind of neither here nor there in the scheme of things, really, as to whether they are linked in the responses or not. But I just always hate it when some vendor claims something that isn't true, and LexisNexis should know better than that.
I kind of like this formulation of a question that we got from Richard here. Is there anything that folks saw that was new in this project, or have we seen just different parts of all of this in other projects? Anyone?
I think that was more for
Obviously
me,
a good-
I thought it. All right, go on. Someone else jump in because I already talked. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, obviously, it was a good question since nobody had said anything.
Well,
no, I don't think there is anything new in it myself. I think, I mean, there's
so.
essentially nothing. I mean, well, first of all, they had already rolled out a preview version of this before, and I think it pretty much had those same core tasks in the preview version. I think they added in the document uploading or something, which was essentially sounds like what they had before with their whatever they called the other thing that was like a Kara ripoff, not ripoff, imitation.
We keep seeing the same four functionalities. Everybody is working on the same four functionalities. I guess the thing that is unique is they're the only one that linked to Shepard citations. And so if you are a true believer in Shepard citations as opposed to KeyCite, that is totally unique, and that's your selling point.
What I
guess,
thought
yeah,
was,
it's kind of like sorry, go ahead.
no, I'll go after you. You haven't weighed in yet. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of like, yeah, like, is there anything new about it? I mean, I guess, you know, I kind of agree with what you guys said, but it's kind of like, yeah, I guess the main selling point is for people who are either already using Lexis or who trust, you know, their vast database and their experts and their their commentaries and whatnot, and so it's kind of like the things that they kind of did, that they kind of trumpeted, like the hallucination-free citations, that kind of stuff. Like that seems to be sort of like the more of the stuff that they're trying to use to differentiate themselves from the pack. But really, it's just going to be a matter of like, I mean, and also looking at the price. So it's kind of like if you're already wedded to Lexis, you're already established as like a customer of them, then you'll probably just shell out the extra money if you have it for this, and trust that because you've always used them, you've always used their sites, you've always used their commentaries and whatnot, that you'll get a good product that'll do what you need to be done. Like you're not going to switch. You're not all of a sudden going to switch to like Westlaw or to like some other company just because their AI tool looks a little bit nicer or is a little bit is a little bit better. So I think that's kind of what they're counting on, the fact that they have such a huge market share already, and that their audience is kind of like as long as they provide something that their audience can use, to keep up with the rest of the pack, then they'll be fine.
Well, ROI, somebody just mentioned the ROA, and that's exactly where I was going to go. First of all, no one's guaranteeing anything is free of hallucinations. How much faster are you actually going to be, and how do you translate that? I mean, right now, the cost of these products, the cost that I am hearing, are breathtaking, given that the market right now is very nervous. The law firms they're trying to keep their expenses flat. And if people are trying to, and let me just pull a large number out, a hallucinated large number, like say 25% increase to go from product A, which is pretty good, to product B with AI that actually has the caveat of hallucinations and other kinds of ways that you need to go back and double check your work. What is the net ROI? What is the net efficiency impact of this?
Well, and I think it's a particularly interesting question that you just asked. I also have something else I want to say in a minute, but in my Above the Law article that we're going to probably talk about soon, what was interesting was that the Florida bar, one of the questions that they are putting out there for general commentary on is, should firms have to disclose they're using AI and reduce their the cost of their legal services accordingly because of the time saved? So given what you just said about how firms are trying to keep their expenses level, and there's going to be some hesitancy to invest additional monies into this, it's going to be even worse if the ethics committee starts saying, and you got to cut your costs because you're using it. I mean, that's going to really undercut the sales process of these and the benefit of these tools if that happens. I don't think it will.
I also think it'll be easier to measure the ROI in some of the other functionalities like drafting and summarization. But on the research side, I'm not sure how quickly it's going to make research quicker or more reliable.
Well, I don't think it's supposed to, though. I mean, isn't the point this is supposed to be additive to the legal research? This is not supposed to be a substitute for full-blown LexisNexis research.
Yeah, but that's true now. You get it. You put in a natural language query and you get a list of cases that you're supposed to site check and read and figure out. And that is essentially the same thing with the added worry that is there anything here that's been hallucinated or over promoted based on the AI?
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, but I'm saying it's not. I think that's part of what law firms have to factor in is the fact that this is not a replacement for traditional legal research. It's something they're paying for in addition to their traditional legal research tool. And is that extra oomph that they get out of a product like this really worth the extra price? I don't know that it necessarily is at this point. It's great for quick, direct answers to questions, but you wouldn't use it as a substitute for thoroughly researching an issue that you had to deal with. The other point I wanted to make is just going back to that question: is there anything different in this? That was part of the reason I thought that the VLEX product that came out a couple of weeks ago was kind of clever, because it did have a couple of things that were different that nobody else is doing right now. comparative law, legal comparative tool by which you can compare state laws or compare international laws, I thought was really clever, and could be potentially really useful for certain kinds of law practices. And the build an argument one, I thought was pretty cool, which I really haven't seen anybody else do yet either. Whether that's worth the price, I don't know what they're charging for it, but again, that's something they are doing a couple things that nobody else seems to be doing with their AI.
I have two things to say. One is addresses the issue of what's different about this. What was different from my perspective, or what was interesting, was seeing how they rolled it out, what their user interface, what they ultimately settled on for their user interface, what they settled on for each of those different categories that they were going to roll it out with, their pricing, how they were approaching the different markets, meaning solo and smalls versus the large firm market, because Lexis has been in AI for a long time, longer than most of these other companies. Quite frankly, they invested in Lex Machina early on. So it's really interesting to see how they're approaching that, especially the pricing, because this stuff is not cheap to run on the back end with that processing and the tokens per inquiry and stuff. It is expensive. And I think that's a challenge that every company is trying to tackle and figure out how they roll these things out, whether it's included in the functionality of their product and they charge it different in a tier, or whether it's a complete and separate add-on, or whether it is literally like function by function by function that you add on. I mean, there's so many ways to approach this. And so it's really interesting to see how they have approached it, especially since they've been working with a lot of large firms in beta, and they're trying to attack the whole market with this. So I thought that was particularly interesting. And then I just wanted to touch on, somebody asked a question, and it was about Brian Belt, the great, how high is the risk of hallucination when you have a closed database? And that's an interesting question. And I got called to task on that. I was on a panel recently, and Pablo Arredondo was on it as well. And I was answering a question and basically saying that, with summarization, if you're going to upload a document, you're going to have I was trying to show ways that lawyers could use it that were sort of hallucination free as much as possible. And I said summarization was a good way to do that. And he kind of called me out. And he was, well, he didn't kind of, he did. And I think he was right, because he raised the point that if you upload an entire, the larger the document, the higher the risk of hallucination. So that's like where CoCounsel comes in. Conveniently, that's what he's there to represent. But if you're just uploading a 2-page document or a blog post, it's going to be much more accurately summarize that and not make stuff up. But the larger the document, the more the risk you have of it kind of making things up or playing with the facts and throwing extra things in there. So, providing it with just a specific database or specific set of data to pull from limits it. But at this point, that's why no one can actually say hallucination free, because it's just not. You can provide hallucination free citations because they're really limiting it, so they can make that claim, but it's very different.
But effectively, they can be effective. They can be effectively hallucinating. I mean, like even Pablo would say they describe CoCounsel as effectively hallucination free, not like 99% hallucination free. I mean, if you're using retrieval augmented generation, and the way the way you're doing it is you're basically going and doing almost a traditional legal query search, and then running the AI against the results of that search. So. It dramatically reduces the likelihood of hallucination.
For sure. And I agree with that. I had been making a claim about ChatGPT, which I may not have mentioned in my initial. And he was basically saying that, which I agree with, I recommend people use legal specific products, but he was basically saying they're not going to have enough guardrail on the back end of this thing to really, hone it in when you upload a document that large. And so that's why you need the legal specific, where they guardrail everything and have the programming and the prompt engineering on the back end that limits it significantly. And so that's sort of the point he was trying to make, and he's definitely right about that.
But what I have heard from people inside, I'm not going to say who, inside one of these big companies, it's not that it makes up cases, but it's still at a point where it can recommend the wrong case as being the best case. It's not a complete fabrication. So I feel like we are being asked to pay an awful lot of money for products that are pretty close to beta. And it's basically the customers are going to be helping them figure out how to get it right.
Well, yeah, one other complaint I wanted to make about this about this rollout. Sorry, like I know there's some Lexis people on the call here, but it's just, I mean, whatever happened to giving reporters a chance to see these things before they roll out, and not just a controlled demonstration, you know, that they hastily call together. I mean, when did they? I mean, I think they organized this like what, last Thursday or Friday for a Monday call or something like that. And you know, there was a time when they would have said, okay, we're going to be announcing this on such and such a date. Here's a preview version that you can log into and try out, and then write about it and tell us what you think. And it's getting so rare for companies to want us to actually be hands-on with their products before they launch. You know, it's sort of like those. You know, when they release a movie and they don't let the critics see it before it goes out or something. I mean, it makes you wonder why that is. And I wish they would go back to that practice of giving us some time to play with these things before they actually release them.
And I think, Bob, it's even worse than the movie and the critic situation, because, you know, most of us, I don't practice law full time, so I'm never going to be able, I'll never use the product. I'll never know, you know, unless I have some access. I mean, that's and the people that do use the product, the practicing lawyers, I mean, most of them are, I mean, they're busy practicing law. They don't have time to, you know, so let me write an article about the LexisNexis product. Excuse me while I abandon 8 billable hours to write this article. It'll do me absolutely no good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Whereas Dennis says that
you
would
know,
mean the product actually had to be finished.
yeah, right.
When I was a Thomson Reuters author for a decade, writing a book about criminal law in New York, they wouldn't give me access, even temporary access, to Westlaw Edge. They always made me use the old, like I had free access to it, but they wouldn't even let me look at Westlaw Edge. And I thought it was the strangest thing. I was like, I literally write about this and I work for you guys, and I don't work for them, but
Did you have to use dot commands?
practically, I was stuck with an old crappy one. And I felt they could never put it up the ladder to give me access to Edge. And so I feel like sometimes that just sometimes gets, the practicality of giving press access to things seems to be lost lately.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of other stuff to talk about this week. And now that we've complained about LexisNexis, sorry, Alex. No, I actually think the product looks pretty good. It's just, it would be great to be able to get in and try it and see how it is for ourselves. But I know that Joe has to jump out early today, so I want to make sure we get to Joe. Plus, he's got something so interesting that even Steve wanted to talk about it as well. So maybe we can double team on this one.
Sure. Yeah. So ACC is going on right now, the Association of Corporate Counsel. So the in-house conference that we didn't go to because we'd been to conferences basically nonstop since August. And I think none of us went, right? I certainly didn't.
No.
I was just like, no, I'm done. So since we did not go, we did learn, though, that they put together a survey along with Everlaw of, you know, hundreds and hundreds of in-house counsel about like what their thoughts are on the mood of the industry. And there were a lot of takeaways from a business law perspective that were very interesting. But I also noted, and I wrote about this, that there's a big push to lower costs, and that push is largely with the threat that they're going to bring work in-house, which in-house counsel people always say, and then they figure out how much a full-time employee costs, and then they realize they have to hire a law firm anyway. So put that to one side. I mean, they have a vested interest in acting like they're going to walk away. They're basically the most pathetic person at the car dealership, like, I'm going to go away. And it's like, sure you are. Anyway, but that to one side. What I thought was interesting, though, is we're going to bring everything in-house is always a big figure, but we are going to invest in AI and tech to get out of our costs tripled since last year's survey, which I thought was interesting because it suggests that even though big law may not be super excited about these products quite yet, the clients are starting to really feel like this is a place where they have leverage. Now, whether it's because they really have leverage or they think that this is something they can say to threaten law firms. I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting takeaway.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff in there. And like you, I mean, Joe, in-house lawyers have been saying for years that they're going to take more work inside, and somehow it never seems, I mean, it fluctuates a little here and a little there. But, query whether with these new tools, maybe they'll be able to. The other thing I thought was kind of interesting is, so they were asked how satisfied they were with their outside lawyers in particular categories. And it appeared that the outside lawyers did okay when it came to communications and things like that. Where they didn't do very well was on predictability and cost. And then when you drop down and say, okay, what are you going to do to control those two issues? Less than a third mentioned the use of alternative fees, which of course is a good way to predict costs, which sort of suggests, that even though we've been around with alternative fees for a while, it still doesn't seem to have caught on like maybe you would have if you were really interested in predictable costs. Because that's one huge advantage, and it's a huge advantage both for the in-house people and also for the law firms. I mean, knowing, if you're going to get a quarterly fee of $50,000 and you're going to get it, that's easy to predict and deal with. The other thing that was kind of funny, Axiom came out with a survey on similar issues, and it's really kind of striking because they surveyed the in-house people, and like 90% of them were very dissatisfied with their situation, and most of it had to do with a lack of resources to do the work. And yet, we're going to bring all this work inside, according to the Everlaw survey, but we're already overworked and can't do it. So what are we going to? And the other thing that they said is, that they didn't think outside lawyers could help them much with this resource problem, because outside lawyers generally gave conceptual advice and not practical advice, which I know it's kind of funny, actually. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff there.
I was when I first read this, I haven't actually read the report, but when I saw Joe's story, my initial reaction was kind of what you had just said, Steve, which was we've been hearing this saw for a number of years now that they're going to bring this work in-house, and they never do it. It's sort of like the old get rid of the billable hour one that we keep hearing about, and it never happens. But I actually do think, I am starting to hear about it a lot more frequently, and hear more GC talk about the fact that they're doing it. I talked about, I was at this KM and Innovation conference a couple of weeks ago, and Mark Smolek, who's the chief legal officer at DHL, spoke there, and he had the slide up, which I'm looking at, which I took a picture of, but he was talking about just looking at the cost of this, the economics of it, and he said, a fully loaded cost of an associate general counsel in his legal department, counting overhead, everything else that goes into it, probably about $450,000 a year for everything. Whereas the cost of a first-year law firm associate for doing the equivalent amount of work is well over $1 million. And just the economics of it for them make it a lot more worthwhile for them to start to look at exactly what can they bring in-house and do in-house. They're going to ultimately save money on a lot of this work.
I had talked to an in-house counsel at an insurance company not long ago, and he was saying, with a lot of these automation tools now, I can create letters using the tools that, whereas before I might have to ask an outside counsel to draft it. Now I can do it, just by flipping a switch, and it comes out. And so he was saying that he was doing much more work that he used to farm out. So you may be right.
Yeah, I'd take a look at the survey, but it seems like with the AFA thing, it's just like, it's always just kind of like, yeah, we want to talk about AFAs, we want to have more AFAs, but it's never really defined what they're talking about. Like, they just mean flat fees? Do they mean some kind of like, metric based thing, or some kind of like, you hit certain metrics and you get paid, or you have like, just a discount, or what? So maybe in the future, like kind of looking at sort of like what Joe was talking about with the jump for like people who want to like leverage AI more. Maybe they should rephrase the question. So like, do they want like to kind of use AI to kind of leverage
Right.
these
Right.
kind of alternative fees? Because if they're cutting down so much on billable time by using these tools, then maybe that's a conversation worth having, and maybe that's something that clients can start pushing for.
Yep. One other interesting finding before we leave the survey, the Everlaw survey, is a lot of them were talking about bringing work in-house. They were also asked about using alternative legal service providers, and like 10% said, well, that's sort of an option, which I thought was kind of interesting in a way, because there's been sort of the notion of the rise of these alternative legal service providers and what they could do. And one way of looking at it is maybe some of the automated AI tools may take the place of that work. The other way to look at it is that they're just not, in-house people are just not ready to unbundle some of the work and send it piecemeal. I don't know what the answer is. I mean,
Yeah. Or Joe, you're free to leave.
I'm here till pretty much the end.
Good.
But yeah,
We don't want you to leave. Just all right.
we just want you to go to the basement.
Join us in the basement. And while Nikki's alone upstairs, we can ask her to talk about ethics and AI.
Well, so I as I tend to do when I publish my the ABA publishes my articles for them. I do include them, but I don't usually offer them as a topic, but I'm adding it into the chat just because they're educational articles about software, not super controversial or
Unlike what the rest
trending.
of us write.
But so I added that this month was about the payment processing software tools and how the market's changed since I last wrote about that in 2020, and how lawyers can go about choosing the right tool for their firm. But then I also, for Above the Law, wrote an article that a blog post that I linked to earlier because someone had asked in the panel chat where the Florida bar's questions were. And so I linked to that so this person could access it, but I published it publicly in the chat. But my article for Above the Law is about balancing legal ethics with rapid AI innovation. And essentially, I talked about how AI is advancing really quickly, and that NetDocuments, and Lexis both announced the general release of their generative AI solutions, and that most of them are still in beta, but rapidly being developed. And we're going to see all sorts of movement in this space. And in the meantime, a bunch of bar associations have said they're going to do something about it. And they've formed some committees and they're going to write some opinions, but none of those opinions have come out yet. And then most recently, Florida threw its hat into the ring and indicated that it was going to be seeking comments from the bar members on a number of different questions, and that would help inform their opinion that they ultimately wrote. And the comments I thought were really telling, and I included them in the article. Some of them were ones we've already talked about and that I've already thought about. Informed consent to use generative AI. That always happens whenever there's new tech, and everybody talks about that. And initially lawyers have to get informed consent, and eventually the ethics committees are like, sorry, we changed our mind, it's too commonplace. I think that's what's going to happen, unfortunately, with AI. Generative AI, they're going to require consent from the clients initially, which I think is stupid. In case anyone from any of the bars is listening, that's a waste of time, and they're going to have to renege on that eventually. Whether a lawyer has to supervise generative AI, that's another big issue. And what does that look like? And is it the same as supervising an assistant or an associate? And how is that going to work with AI? And what does supervise even mean? The ethical limitations and conditions that apply to lawyers' fees and costs. This one I thought was super interesting. And this is what I referenced earlier. including whether a lawyer must revise their fees to reflect an increase in efficiency due to the use of AI technology, and whether a lawyer may charge clients for time spent learning how to use that tech more effectively. There's definitely parallels to legal research and how people used to charge for that and now they don't. But I also think that that's sort of indicative of that, the thesis that I've thrown around, and some people agree and some disagree, that this may completely undercut the billable hour once and for all. Because if the bars actually start to say you've got to revise your fees when you use generative AI, I mean, that means you're talking about flat fee billing. And what the idea is that you can use this technology with your practice management platforms or your legal billing software or whatever functionalities you use to run your firm. If the technology is built in there, it can help you very accurately predict how much these cases actually cost you. And you can even throw in the different features, like if you think it's going to go to trial or not. And it may actually be a really good way to come up with a reliable flat fee once and for all that can then make it so that I know some people don't agree, but we'll see. But it will be interesting to see how that goes. And then they also talked about whether you can, another question, can you advertise private and in-house generative AI technology is objectively superior or unique when compared to those used by other lawyers or providers? Interesting, think Harvey, for example, like, is that better than LexisNexis's product? And then whether you can instruct or encourage clients to create and rely upon due diligence reports generated solely by AI. That seems pretty specific to a certain type of practice area, but I thought those questions were kind of interesting and telling. And some were definitely beating new tech to death. Like some of them, you just want to be like, stop it. Like, don't do this again, but we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what all these opinions say.
Why do we need, I mean, we have a duty of technology competence. Why do we need any different set of ethics rules around AI, especially the one in there about the duty to supervise? Because every single ethics opinion that's come down on the duty of tech competence talks about the fact that lawyers have a duty to supervise the use of technology in their matters, and to supervise even, people who are involved in the case, their support staff, whatever else, how they're using technology in the matter. So clearly that duty already exists, so that would be redundant. The other stuff, as I think you and several people in the chat point out, just sounds silly a lot, frankly. But it's Florida.
Well, I don't know, Bob. Have there been any ethical rulings actually holding lawyers responsible for not complying with the duty of competency and comment 8? I have not seen any. If there are, but
There have been not suspension, not disbarments, but there have been people who have been verbally reprimanded and that sort of thing for violations of the duty of tech competence. But there have certainly been lawyers who have been sanctioned in court hearings for technological incompetence, especially in e-discovery matters. That has happened. All right. Any other comments on lawyers and ethics? Move right off of ethics. No, it was a good article. It's good. It's food for thought for sure. So, Gene, I did want to get to your stop-start survey. It's always a fascinating survey of basically what products law firms are canceling and which ones they're buying, right? Is that the bottom line of it?
Yeah, and other general trends. But it was funny because I was thinking, I actually hadn't during the pandemic, things slowed down so much. I actually thought I was going to have to end the survey because it felt like we went into this weird lull where nothing was happening for a long, long time. And now we are sort of overwhelmed with this AI type of hysteria. So a lot of the survey focused on AI, but in a very weird way, because everyone was talking about products they weren't actually buying. They were talking about products they were thinking about buying. So there were some interesting takeaways. I mean, overwhelmingly, CoCounsel got 63%. It was voted the best product that anybody had seen. Not that everybody had bought it, but before it was bought by Thomson Reuters, it was absolutely regarded as the best product. And one of the interesting takeaways I thought was, what are the AI products you are thinking of implementing or evaluating? And at the top of the list was Lexis. It actually got more votes than CoCounsel, although CoCounsel and Westlaw combined were higher. But this survey happened before Thomson Reuters had acquired CoCounsel. But what I thought was interesting about Lexis being at the top was that their education strategy, they had those 2 outreach strategies of the insider and I think the counsel something, where they were trying to engage people in learning about AI, even more than showing them the product. They were engaging people. And I thought, wow, that really shows this was a pretty successful approach. The other interesting takeaway, and I don't know, Joe, did you say that Jeff McCoy is on this call?
No, but
No,
that's why I grabbed that phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came out was who were the best, or who had the best research or workflow features or products by parent. And this is what was really weird. Thomson Reuters, although they had launched Precision within the last year, they were not on the list at all. How incredible is that? They had a major launch last October, and it had so little market penetration and so little adoption. There were so few people that even thought it was a great product. It didn't make the list. I know they're remedying that they're going to be integrating the case text thing, but I think in my whole career, or certainly in the years that I've been doing the survey, I can't remember another time where a major launch was completely ignored in the survey results. So the people that did LexisNexis was top. And a lot of the reason Lexis gets a lot of attention is because they have so many different products within their brand that they do a lot of different things, and they actually do a lot of innovating. Case text was next. Bloomberg actually had 15%, and Trellis and Business Law Research, which is a real sleeper, they bought Docket Navigator. So each of those companies had the products or features that were most interesting to the marketplace. So I think I already talked about most of the interesting things. I'm going to be doing a part 2 of this. It was surprising to me that even though Bloomberg has generated a lot of hostility because they changed their price in the past year, they actually came out as the top product that people plan to expand access to. In terms of reduce, they were also the top product that people plan to reduce. So there you go. But the products that people are targeting really were in the analytics area, which really surprised me, because for a couple of years, analytics was just the glorious, wonderful thing that changed the way we do research. And it's now sort of become ordinary and commoditized. So people are starting to, I think the products are maturing enough that people are looking and saying, well, which ones can I get rid of? Because now Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg all have internal analytics of some kind. So people are looking to get rid of. Thomson Reuters has a standalone analytics product called Monitor Suite. Lex Machina is a standalone product. And then people also mentioned Docket Alarm and Westlaw Edge. So I think those are the big takeaways.
Yeah. Well, Gene, somebody was asking about what was the product launch that you said that people had largely missed, which was what
Precision. It was Precision, which was it was a big product launch. It was last, I believe, October. I went back and checked when I wrote my post, and it was, there were a couple of things about that. It was, again, a high ticket price, and it was also the first launch that Thomson Reuters ever did where it was really only a partial launch. So you were buying segments of legal research. You were buying like commercial law. It wasn't the entire breadth of all of the topics that Westlaw covered. It was being approached topic by topic. And the reason that it was being approached topic by topic was because they had hired 250 editors to help them to help them analyze the law. And now, obviously, now that they have acquired CoCounsel, their approach to precision is going to be transformed into an AI-driven product. So I think the results will be very different next year. I'd be shocked if that wasn't at the top of the list in the 2024 survey.
Yeah. All right. Well, off of products and onto pro bono. Victor, the ABA Journal had a story this week. I also covered it about some news on the pro bono front. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. I think a lot of people covered it, but yeah. So Paladin, who was I think Kristen's usually on this call, but I'm not sure.
She is.
Okay. All right. Hi, Kristen. So anyway,
Everybody say hi, Kristen.
Let's see. My check's in the mail, by the way, right? No, so so yeah,
journalistic integrity, I like.
Yeah. So Paladin announced this week that sorry, my kid keeps bringing home lots of random things from.
You're gonna have to go to the basement if you do that
preschool.
again, though.
I'm already in the basement, so you know I don't know if I can go any lower. So yeah, Paladin, which has built us up as sort of a go-to platform for connecting pro bono, like the pro bono community, matching lawyers with potential clients and whatnot. They kind of got a supercharge this week by announcing a partnership with the DOJ, so that now federal lawyers who they can take on pro bono parties as long as they don't interfere with their official duties and whatnot. Now they have access to the platform, so they can be matched with potential pro bono clients and whatnot. And it just seemed like a good mix of like a good marriage of need and like a platform that was there for to help them and whatnot. It just seemed like it was a good mix of that. And I didn't write the story. I didn't, but I would have been curious as sort of like like how long, how it came about, how long this had been marinating. But it definitely seemed like it was kind of a natural fit as far as helping an audience of helping clients in need with lawyers who are willing to take on their cases and adding like a big influx of good lawyers. I mean, federal government doesn't hire too many bad lawyers. So I thought it was a good mix of need plus a platform that can help a lot of people out there who have cases that where they need attorneys and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. I mean, obviously, they've Paladin has a good reputation in the tech sphere in general. And it'll be interesting to see how this works out going forward. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how that goes.
Yeah, I picked up on the word Kristen had used in her announcement of it. I think calling this monumental, but it just seems like potentially a huge boost for pro bono. I mean, the Department of Justice already had a pro bono program, but by they've got it was 10,000 lawyers or something like that in the Department of Justice, and by plugging them into the opportunities in the Paladin program, it seems like the potential could really be huge. I was curious about what kinds of cases they can and cannot take. I mean, there must be a whole bunch of disqualification issues there for federal government lawyers in any number of kinds of cases. But still, clearly they already have a strong program, and this just makes it stronger and stretches out opportunities even farther.
Yeah, and I mean, if if you're a client, say, yeah, who wouldn't want like a potential, like, who wouldn't want like a federal prosecutor on your side for once, I mean, I mean, there are a lot of great lawyers out there who, who this opens up all kinds of opportunities for, both clients and the lawyers. So no, it was a good mix. Like, I mean, I always like it when kind of things kind of make sense like that, and so that was nice to see. So it's kind of like, not to mix metaphors we were talking about earlier, I guess, but like, yeah, it's like one of those like trades where, like, both teams are benefit, like where it's like, like the Knicks trading Charles Oakley or the Bulls trading Charles Oakley to the Nets, to the Knicks for Bill Cartwright. Like, both teams benefited. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah. All right. Was there anything else? I mean, I guess the other, well, we kind of already alluded to, I was just going to mention the NetDocuments release this week. I mean, Nikki, you talked about it with reference to your ethics article already, and there's not much more to say about it. We had talked about it before, how they had kind of married their pattern builder software to generative AI to create some pretty cool opportunities that are all available right within NetDocuments. They had announced that a while ago, but they just released it to general availability this week with a few more skills added on. I wasn't, it's another conference I think a lot of us all missed. I had wanted to go to the NetDocuments conference, which was down in San Antonio this week, which is also where ACC is, I think. But I wasn't able to go because of work obligations. I think what NetDocuments is doing with AI is potentially really cool, and is going to prove to be really valuable to their customers. So just a nod to that, I guess. Anything else anybody want to talk about? Good of the order?
Bob, I will put in a plug for your podcast with Brian Banks. I listened to it, and that was really a fascinating interview of a very interesting and thought-provoking guy. So, the issues that he raises with respect to people that are wrongfully convicted and the problems in the justice system is certainly worth some thought. And so I'm glad that you did that. It's a good interview.
Thanks. Yeah, and that, with Brian was at a keynote speaker at Clio, but he was at the age of 16 wrongfully accused of rape, and ended up plea bargaining against his better wishes, the advice of his lawyer, and then ended up spending time in prison. But Michael Szymanczyk, formerly of the California Innocence Project, now of the Innocence Center, he just started, and he was also on that podcast. And he's just an amazing guy also. And Michael, if you haven't listened to his podcast over on the Legal Talk Network, I think it's called California Innocence Project, although they're about to change the name of it because he just left the Innocence Project. But it's an excellent podcast about wrongful convictions and innocence. And while we're putting in plugs, you reminded me, Steve, I just meant to say, I just put out a notice today also, but just 2 weeks left to get your applications in for Startup Alley at ABA Tech Show. Always a seminal event at Tech Show. It's the opening night event at which startups get to pitch their products, and then also get space in a special Startup Alley area of the exhibit hall. It's a great opportunity for startups. A whole bunch of big name companies now have come through the Startup Alley. So I hope people don't wait until the last minute. If probably, a lot of you on this call may well know people with startups, early stage companies. Let them, make sure they know about it, make sure they get their applications in. You can find out all about it on my blog.
I got to say, like, it always, I don't know about you, Steve, but like, Tech Show always kind of creeps up on me. It's always like a lot closer than I think it is. Like, even though it still seems like it's months and months away, but just like within like, I always feel like within a couple of months, I was like, oh my God, it's here already.
It is earlier,
and it's even earlier. It's earlier this year. Yeah, it's in the middle of February as opposed to the end or early March. So
We get to spend Valentine's Day loving startups at Startup Valley.
in
Right,
in the
February
Hyatt.
14th. And the Hyatt,
Oh,
loving the Hyatt, which we
and
all,
Stephanie's
That's what I
not
was
here.
gonna say, Stephanie's not here,
yeah, we all have a big heart for the Hyatt, or not. All right. Well, thanks to everybody. Thanks to all who tune in to listen, whether live here or in our recorded versions of the show. And thanks, as always, to the panelists. We'll be back next week to talk about whatever happens then. So see you then.
Bye all. Have a great weekend.
Great weekend.